Okay. Staff ready to go? Okay. Commissioners?
Ready.
Good morning, everybody. The time is 10:02, and I call the October 20th, 2022 Planning Board meeting to order. We have the following board members with us. We have Vice Chair Bailey and Commissioners Washington, Dorner, and Giraldo. We have a full complement with you. I'm Chair Shapiro. Moving forward to the business, and please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration and for all submission of materials and exhibits was 12 noon the Tuesday before this planning board meeting. Registered speakers may join the meeting with the link provided in the email provided by the planning board office or listen by phone by utilizing the call-in number provided in the email. Of course, anyone can tune in to watch the planning board meetings via live stream. If you wish to speak or become a person of record, please use the online web form, which you see noticed on the screen. In addition to the commissioners, we are joined by our Deputy Planning Director, Derek Delage, David Warner, our Principal Counsel, Jessica Jones, our Planning Board Administrator, Joe Parsons, our Senior Technical Hearing Writer, James Hunt, Division Chief, Development Review Division, and we have staff members Kenneth Flanagan and Ryan Cron, who are helping us with the technical operations behind the scenes. Thank you to you both. In terms of our order of cases, commissioners, we're going to take it up as in the order as prescribed, but there's going to be two small changes. Item 6 is we'll take up as actually we have a new item on the agenda. Let me step back. There's an item on the consent agenda, item 4D, which we're going to pull off the consent agenda, and we're going to take up as the first item on the regular agenda. It's just for technical reasons. Staff will handle it, and it should just take a few minutes. So that means item 4D becomes item 7 and will go as the first item on the regular agenda. And then we'll take up item 6, and we will end with item 5 on the regular agenda. So with that, I want to bring up item 1, and item 1 is bittersweet. Item 1 is a resolution in appreciation of Marie Proctor, who is leaving us after many, many, many years. Marie is a senior technical writer, editor with the Prince George's County Planning Board office. She's retiring from the commission effective after 31 years of service with the commission. Wonderful, wonderful work. She began working with the commission in 1991. She contributed to multiple departments. She's had several roles across the board. She's done an excellent job. And I just want to say that from my own experience, having stepped in about 6 months ago, Marie has been invaluable in supporting me and for my own learning and development. She's been very thoughtful about how we approach the planning board agendas, and I really am personally very appreciative of everything that she has done, and we'll miss her. I don't know if there's any other thoughts or feelings from other commissioners. I want to give you all a minute if you have anything that you want to add as well.
Well, I'd like to.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
No, you're the vice chair.
Oh, no, I'm not. Like I promoted this morning.
Oh.
Well, while you all are discussing, I will go ahead and say that I would like to associate myself with everything Mr. Chairman stated, and I will definitely miss her. She has been certainly invaluable to my experience, to my learning curve, and I truly, truly will miss her willingness to be of assistance, and I wish her well.
And I too associate myself with all of those comments, and would just add that Marie always did everything with a huge and generous smile. Right. Whatever it was, whatever we were contending with, no matter how long a case was going, she was always smiling. And so, Marie, I will miss you, but I will certainly miss your calming smile on a daily basis. And I wish you well. Manny, your turn now.
Oh. I'm sorry. I'm going to wait for Will.
I'll jump in if you're waiting for me then. So yeah, I'll say, Marie, we're definitely going to miss you. It's unfortunate we don't get to say this in person or see you and kind of hang out for a little bit, because that's always been fun, kind of in the back hallways, just chatting and catching up before cases and then after cases. So we'll definitely miss your presence and have appreciated all the help that you've given, keeping us on track. And then particularly in sort of the COVID virtual environment, she's been great about just making sure I have all the documents that are coming across, because I don't get the printouts of all the cases. And Marie always keeps me on track and make sure I have the digital copies. And I've definitely appreciated the organization and the assistance and support. So best of luck to you going forward in your retirement. Now you can go, Marie.
All right, it's my turn, Marie. So I guess I can't say much more than what all my colleagues have said. I've really enjoyed working with you these past 12 years. You were always open to suggestions when we asked for things in terms of our documents so that we could be as prepared as possible for the hearings. And thank you for all your years of service to the commission. Congratulations on your retirement, but I know you'll probably wind up working for some planning department in Delaware, which is fine. I could understand, it's closer to home. But again, thank you. And I miss our lunches.
Oh, yes.
So, and the cakes and the desserts. So with that, c'est la vie.
Indeed. Marie, you've had quite an impact, and as you hear from all the kind words, we truly appreciate it. So with that, I would look for a motion to approve a resolution of appreciation for Marie Proctor.
Motion to approve.
Did I second?
We have a motion to approve by Vice Chair Bailey. We have a second by, I believe, Commissioner Dorner. One? No? Who did I get? We'll go with Commissioner Washington. All right. All right, exactly. It was second, third, and fourth on this one. So
Exactly.
if there's no further discussion on the motion, I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. Ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Marie. And there will be a staff reception recognizing her this afternoon at 3 o'clock for anybody who wants to participate. And you'll hear lots of kind words about Marie at that as well. So anyhow, thank you very much. So moving on the agenda, item number 2, we need a motion to approve the draft minutes from October 13, 2022.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Giraldo, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion on the motion? I'll call the roll. Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. Ayes have it 5-0. Next item is item 3A. This is supplemental legislation, CB 92, 2022. So a couple things on this, Commissioners. First of all, what staff is proposing on the changes are kind of technical. It's about staff making sure that the intention of the proponent of the bill is that their goals are being met. But then we just found out that it looks like the chair may be pulling the bill in its entirety. So it may be moot, but we feel that it probably makes sense to, just in case, for us to hear from staff, and if we concur, to still go forward with what we recommend as the changes, even if the bill's going away, okay? So with all that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Williams, I assume, who's going to
yes, sir.
talk us through this. Okay, take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Chad Williams of the Countywide Planning Division of the Planning Department. So as you may recall, CB 92 2022 Draft 2 is a proposed legislative amendment that would have eliminated the council's election to review procedures from the current zoning ordinance. And you took up comments on this bill initially on September 15th, supporting the bill with proposed amendments. On that same day, the Planning, Housing, Economic Development, or FED Committee discussed the bill and incorporated amendments to Draft 2. As we were reviewing and doing due diligence and staff to get ready for the public hearings on Tuesday, along with the Fed committee report on this bill, we believe that the committee wished to extend the coverage so that it also eliminated the election review procedures for projects that were using the transitional provisions of the current ordinance that were proceeding under the regulations of the prior ordinance. So amending the prior ordinance through the transitional provisions, in other words. However, the language that was actually incorporated in draft 2 has a much broader and unintended effect. Specifically, lines 3 through 5 on page 5 added a new duty or responsibility of the district council that would authorize council's final decision on any application that was processed using the transition provisions of the subtitle. And what this would mean is that applications of any type, including those that have never before been subject to council review, such as and including use and occupancy permits, grading permits, building permits of any type, would be subject to district council's final review if that language carried forward. Since thousands of applications, perhaps thousands every month, fall into this umbrella, council review just would not really be practical, and it seems pretty clear that this was not the intent of the FEC committee. So instead of that clause, staff offer language that could be incorporated potentially as an amendment sheet or other appropriate means to amend CB 92 to clarify that council intent as indicated by the chairman. Namely, the bill would need to incorporate references and language in the transition provisions themselves in 27-1700 and 27-1704 of the new ordinance, to add a new subsection that clearly and directly indicates that election review authority shall not be applicable to any application that proceeded under the regulations of the prior ordinance. And that's the heart of the staff report that was in your backup package. And I'll close out just by saying that should the board concur in transmitting comments, we would just ask to consider a friendly verbal amendment in your vote in the motion, just to clarify that any proposed amendment sheet would also clearly remove the clause that is causing the heartburn amongst staff today. Amendment sheets just need to be very technical and explain everything that the council wishes to do to a bill. And unfortunately, I missed this important nuance in the initial staff report that they just need to have the amendments actually remove that clause. So this concludes staff's presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. If there's no questions for staff, a motion would be in order to accept staff's recommendation as detailed by Mr. Williams and to communicate that, to send comments to this district council. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the recommendation of staff and direct staff to send comments to the district council, excuse me, to remove proposed subsection 27-3301B1I from CB 92 2022 DR-2 and to prepare an amendment sheet or other appropriate means to amend CB 92, in addition to ensuring that any further amendments that may be needed should be added to the amendment sheet, and we so authorize staff to do so.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Mr. Williams, does that capture?
Absolutely. And the fact that Ms. Washington read the clause, that's the clause that just needed to be moved to the amendment sheet. So that does do it. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Yeah, excellent. So we have motion, a second. Any further discussion of the motion? Not, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo,
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey,
But I.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Next we have, thank you, Mr. Williams, appreciate it. Before we go to the next item, I did neglect to mention something that under announcements up front that I think is worth us recognizing, which is one of our own former chair, Elizabeth Hewlett, has been nominated, I think nominated is the right term, by the President of the United States to be a member of the National Capital Planning Commission. And I couldn't be more proud of her. She's going to serve the residents of the region well, and certainly is a proud Prince George's is going to carry our flag as well into that effort. So I just couldn't be happier with this nomination. Say again? Appointment. I'm being corrected by staff, so it's actual formal appointment by the president. So yeah, just wanted to recognize that on camera and say again how proud I am of everything that she has done, and looking forward to continuing great work from her. So much for retirement from Chair Hewlett, right? So I don't know if there's.
I knew it wouldn't last long.
Exactly. So if there's no other comments, I just wanted to make sure that we recognize, noted that on camera. I'm very excited for it. So with that, let's move on to our consent agenda items. Again, at staff's request, we're going to pull item 4D from the consent agenda, and we'll take that up. It'll become item 7, and it'll be on the regular agenda, and we'll take that up first on the regular agendas. But is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 4D?
Motion to approve consent agenda minus 4D in accordance with the recommendation of staff.
Second.
We got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion on the motion? I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Hold on.
I vote aye as well. Ayes have it 5-0. So next on to the regular agenda, and again, we'll take up item 4D first, which is now item 7 on the regular agenda, and we'll turn it over to staff for a brief presentation. This is a technical correction that just needs to occur, and that's why staff wanted to take it off the consent agenda. I'll turn it over to Ms. Lockhart, who will give a brief staff presentation on this.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. For the record, I am Dominique Lockhart, Planner 3 with the zoning section. Staff has provided a revised condition memo dated October 18th that has been added as additional backup for this case. The original condition 1B stated 2 bicycle racks are to be placed outside each apartment building. The revised condition clarifies the number of expected bicycle racks and their location outside every other address for a total of 10 bicycle racks. The applicant was not able to attend today's meeting, but we have an email from them dated October 19th stating his client's acceptance of the revised language. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lockhart. Any questions for staff on this item? If not, motion would be in order to approve item 7, which is the SE 4852 Westgate Apartments. Is there a motion as revised by staff?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the transmittal of SC-4852 to the zoning hearing examiner with the revision to condition 1B as outlined by staff.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion of the motion? Call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Lockhart, for your presentation. Much appreciated. Next, we're going to go to item 6 on our agenda. And hold on one sec. Okay, item 6 on our agenda, MR 2203F Oxon Hill Fire Station. There's no issues. There's no known opposition on this. Just to let everybody know, we're going to have a staff presentation. We do have some folks signed up to speak if there's any questions on behalf of the applicant. So I'll turn to staff for a presentation on this item.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board. For the record, I'm Christine Osei, Countywide Planning Division, Special Projects Section. Item 6 is a proposed Oxon Hill Fire Station by the Prince George's County government. The 12.19 acre site is in the Neighborhood Activity Center and located at 6500 Clipper Way in Oxon Hill, Maryland. The facility will now replace the existing 3 fire stations that operate in the Oxon Hill area. Based on the evaluation and staff analysis, there are no issues and no known opposition as of this morning. Staff recommends that the planning board adopt staff findings of this application and approve the proposed Oxon Hill Fire Station application number MR 2203F, subject to 3 recommendations outlined in page 9 of the staff report. If this is the pleasure of the board to make a motion, this would conclude staff presentation. Otherwise, I'll be happy to provide a full presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osei. I appreciate it. Any questions for staff? Thank you. And I would say this has been a long time coming. So this is even though we're reviewing this, this is more of a celebration for folks in the community, I would say, to see this coming along. So, folks are quite excited about it. We have other folks signed up to speak. I think they're with the applicant's team. Do we need to hear from the applicant on this? Is there anything the applicant wants to chime in on? No? Okay. So there's nothing else before us on this issue. We have representatives from the fire department as well. I'm sorry I missed that. Ms. Foreman? And I apologize if I didn't get your title.
Good morning. My name is Lieutenant Lauren Foreman. I work for Prince George's County Fire EMS Department. And I just want to say we are very excited about this project. And we're excited for the opportunity to be able to serve the community and the citizens in this area.
Thank you, Lieutenant Foreman. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and we're excited about the project as well. So with that, commissioners, I'll close the hearing. If there's nothing else before us, I would look for a motion to accept staff recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, oh, I'm sorry.
Take it away.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the recommendations of staff and approve the transmittal of MR-2203F to Darren McLean, Project Manager, Prince George's County Fire EMS Department.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion on the motion? I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
But I.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Ms. Osei.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda, which is our final item on the agenda, is agenda item 5, which is 4-21058 Fairwood Square. There's some revised conditions. Staff and the applicant are in agreement on this item. I believe there's some folks who want to speak on this issue as well, who have some concerns, who are speaking in opposition. I also, as we go through the process, I want to have staff weigh in a little bit to explain something that is new to us, new to the process, based on actions taken by the district council with the new zoning ordinance related to the approved certificate of adequacy. So I will ask staff to provide some clarifications at some point related to this process. And of course, to answer any other questions they have and clarifications that they need. So let me turn it over to staff first for a staff presentation. I think, Mr. Heath, you're going to give the staff presentation. After that, we'll entertain questions, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Tedesco with the applicant, and he can lead us through that process. And then we will open it up to folks in the community who want to speak as well. Mr. Heath.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, I'm Antoine Heath with the subdivision section. Item number 5 is a preliminary plan of subdivision for 4-21058 Fairwood Square. The applicant is proposing 200 lots and 36 parcels for the development of 200 single-family attached dwellings and 5,000 square feet of commercial use on approximately 22.29 acres. This application is supported by and subject to a certificate of adequacy, ADQ-2022-020, which was approved with conditions on October 4th, 2022, in accordance with Section 24-1904C of the subdivision regulations. And this is included in your backup. Therefore, adequacy of public facilities such as transportation, pedestrian and bikeway, parks and recreation, police, fire and rescue, and schools have been addressed and are not before the board. Regarding the preliminary plan of subdivision, the applicant and staff submitted additional information prior to the Tuesday 12 p.m. deadline. Residents also submitted letters of opposition prior to the deadline as well. The applicant submitted revisions to conditions, a rendered site plan, and a response to opposition that can be found in the additional backup as applicants exhibits 1, 2, and 3. Staff submitted revisions or revised environmental findings, which can be found in the additional backup as staff's exhibit 1. And the residents submitted 13 letters of opposition, which can be found in the additional backup as opposition exhibits 1 through 13. These items will be addressed during the presentation. Slide 2, please. The site is located in northern Prince George's County within Planning Area 71A and Council District 6. Slide 3, please. More specifically, the subject property is located southeast of the Annapolis Road and Enterprise Road intersection. Slide 4, please. In accordance with the current county zoning ordinance, the subject site is located in the residential estate zone. The properties abutting the site to the south share the same zone, and the properties to the east are located within the legacy mixed-use community zone. The adjacent zones are the CGO, RR, RSFA, CS, and ROS zones. This application was reviewed in accordance with the prior county zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations. In the prior county zoning ordinance, the subject site is also located within the residential estate zone. However, the Prince George's County District Council passed Council Bill CB-050-2021, allowing uses that are generally permitted in the mixed-use transportation-oriented zone to be developed within the residential estate zone. The abutting properties to the south share the same zone, and the abutting properties to the east are located within the mixed-use community zone. The adjacent zones are the CO, RR, RT, CM, and ROS zones. Slide 5, please. This aerial photograph shows the site in context with the surrounding improvements. The properties to the north beyond Annapolis Road consist of commercial development. The properties to the east consist of single-family detached dwellings and single-family attached dwellings. The properties to the south and to the west beyond Enterprise Road consist of single-family detached dwellings. And the properties to the northwest beyond Glendale Boulevard and Annapolis Road consist of vacant land, commercial development, as well as single-family attached and detached dwellings. Slide 6, please. The site map shows the topography of the property, which is generally flat at the center of the site, but contains steep slopes along the eastern boundary of the property. Next slide, please. The subject site abuts master plan rights-of-way, Annapolis Road and Enterprise Road, which are both designated as arterial rights-of-way and are highlighted in red. Collector right-of-way Fairwood Parkway can be seen highlighted in green to the east, and primary right-of-way Hillmead Road can be seen to the east as well, highlighted in pink. Slide 8, please. This is a closer look at the site and its current condition. The site was formerly used as a nursery. The surrounding development, as described in the aerial map slide, can be seen as well. The existing structures on site will be removed. Slide 9, please. This is a look at the preliminary plan of subdivision, which depicts the property boundary in red with rights-of-way and dedicated area highlighted in blue. The applicant is proposing 2 points of access onto the site from Annapolis Road. The 2 access points can be seen on the left side of the property. The access point to the north will be a full movement access, and the access point further south will be a right in, right out only. The applicant has proposed revisions to conditions, which can be seen in applicant's Exhibit 1. The applicant has proposed to remove condition 1A of the staff report as the required 10-foot wide public utility easement proposed alongside parcel J has been depicted on the preliminary plan, and staff is in agreement with that revision. The applicant has also proposed a revision to condition 5A to allow the State Highway Administration to modify the design and signage for the required right-in, right-out access if necessary, and staff is in agreement with that revision. The applicant has proposed a revision to condition 10 and 10E, 10 to further clarify when bicycle and pedestrian facilities will be reviewed and constructed, and 10E to clarify which building will be required to have bicycle parking, and staff is in agreement with these revisions. The 200 lots proposed conform to the density allowed in accordance with Council Bill CB-050-2021. The applicant is proposing to meet mandatory parkland dedication requirements with private on-site recreational facilities. This is detailed on pages 5 through 6 of the staff report. Slide 10, please. The applicant submitted a tree conservation plan with this application. Woodland to be preserved is highlighted in green. The applicant has requested a variance from section 25-122B1G to remove 5 of the 11 specimen trees on site. In the introduction of the staff report, it states that 3 specimen trees are to be removed. However, this is an error. Specimen tree removal is discussed further in the environmental findings, and 5 were evaluated for removal. The locations of these trees are highlighted with yellow X's. These trees are proposed to be removed due to proposed grading and stormwater management facilities that are needed, as well as the proximity of 1 tree that is in poor condition to Annapolis Road. The variance has been evaluated in accordance with the provisions of approval detailed on pages 15 through 17 of the staff report, and staff recommends approval. Additional language has been proposed to the Woodland Conservation findings to acknowledge that the Woodland Conservation Ordinance has been reviewed under the standards of the MXT zone and not the RE zone in accordance with Council Bill CB-050-2021. Condition 4D has been proposed to revise the Type 1 Tree Conservation Plan to reflect this. Staff has provided an exhibit titled Staff's Exhibit 1 acknowledging this and is in agreement with this revision. A proposed revision to Condition 3 clarifies that a grading permit will not be issued until a Type 2 Tree Conservation Plan has been approved, and staff is in agreement with this revision. Slide 11, please. The applicant submitted a variation request from section 24-121A4 of the prior subdivision regulations, which requires lots adjacent to arterial roadways to have a minimum lot depth of 150 feet. The subject property is adjacent to 2 arterials, Annapolis Road and Enterprise Road. This 150-foot depth is highlighted in yellow. This variation request has been evaluated in accordance with the associated provisions of approval detailed on pages 20 through 21, and staff is in agreement. Staff recommends approval of this variation request. Slide 12, please. Staff recommends that the planning board adopt the findings and approve preliminary plan of subdivision 4-21058 TCP 1-014-2022, variation request from section 24-121A4 and variance from section 25-122B1G, subject to the 14 conditions in staff's report and the proposed revisions to conditions in applicant's Exhibit 1. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Heath. Appreciate the presentation. Commissioners, just before you may have questions for staff, but before we move on, I just want to go into a little bit more detail around this issue related to the certificate of adequacy, because it's new to us. It's certainly going to be new to the public as well. And it's related to action taken by the district council under the new subdivision regulations. Unless an appeal has been filed, an appeal filed by the applicant, the planning board, we no longer evaluate preliminary plans for adequacy. What that means instead is that the decision is now made by the planning director. This is the district council's direction. And so this is a new process for us, and I want to make sure that we are clear about it. Any questions that you have about it. Mr. Hunt, Mr. Warner, anything else you want to say on that that's going to be helpful for us and for the public as well?
Mr. Chairman, this is James Hunt for the record. No additional items to kind of add into that. We do realize from staff standpoint, this is a new procedure relative to the district council's actions with the subdivision regulations. And so these particular certificates of adequacy are pretty much determined prior to, and is a requirement to be obtained prior to coming to the planning board. So we just want to make sure that's clarified on the record. We do realize there's some opposition in the record that indicates there were some concerns with the adequacy requirements. And so we wanted to kind of make sure we explain that to the planning board prior to moving forward with that as a part of our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Mr. Warner, anything you want to add?
No additional comments. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions about this process, just to make sure we all understand what's before us here?
I don't have any questions about the process. Just one question for staff regarding the presentation at the appropriate time.
Take it away now. What do you have?
Mr. Heath, would you please clarify? Applicant exhibit number 1 had proposed changes to the findings. In my review, it seems that that's already been codified in staff exhibit number 1, and I would just like for you to verify that, please.
Yes. Staff, environmental planning staff had a discussion with the applicant and provided that exhibit clarifying that they've reviewed based on the MXT and not the RE. So that exhibit as well as those revised findings are the same.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Washington. Commissioner Geraldo?
Yeah, I have one, but and it's more for the public. I understand it, but Mr. Heath, can you explain why it's being assessed as an MXT zone as opposed to the RE zone, so that the public has a better understanding that it was a result of the action of the district council?
Yes. There was a text amendment that was approved by the district council that allowed uses that are typically allowed in the MXT zone to be developed within the RE zone, dependent upon certain provisions that are met, and that's one of which is that the property has to be abutting to intersecting arterial rights of way, which this property is doing, has to have at least 20 acres, which this property is doing as well, along with some other provisions that allow for townhouses to be proposed in a zone that's not that doesn't traditionally allow townhouses.
So this was something that was initiated by the district council, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions for staff? Okay, thank you all. Obviously hold the line because there may be additional questions coming your way. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tedesco. If you could introduce yourself and the other individuals who are going to be, who are part of your team, who are going to be joining us, and then take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. For the record, Matthew Tedesco with the law firm of McNamee Hosey in Greenbelt. On behalf of the applicant and the contract purchaser, Timberlake Homes. With us today, we also have representatives from Soltez Engineering and planners for the project, Mr. David Bickle, and from Lenhart Traffic and Consulting, our traffic engineer, Mr. Mike Lenhart. Mr. Chairman, normally speaking, I'd be very brief given the staff recommendations. However, given the citizen interest in this particular case, as well as some of the materials that were provided on Tuesday, for which we've provided written responses to, if you would allow me the indulgence, I do want to take a little bit of time and go through a couple of high points that maybe typically I would omit given the staff recommendation, but I would like the opportunity just to have a little bit of indulgence to go through a handful of things with your permission.
Absolutely, the floor is yours, and you'll also, as the applicant, you'll have the final word. So you'll have another opportunity as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to mention that at the conclusion of my presentation. And famous attorney's last words. I'll try to be brief, but I will get through it as quickly as I can. First and foremost, I want to thank staff for its review, and by staff I mean not only the subdivision section, but environmental planning, transportation planning, countywide special projects, urban design. Your whole assembled team. We work very closely, as you would expect and require us to do, with all of them on this particular project, and I want to thank them publicly for their review. The applicant is in full agreement with the staff recommendations. I believe there is substantial evidence in the record to support the required findings for approval, to include the requested variance for the specimen tree removal, as well as the variation to the lot depth requirement. I also want to, before I get too far ahead and omit unintentionally, I want to thank the citizens who have taken an interest in this particular case. I'll go through that in a little bit more detail in my presentation, but I do want to thank them for taking time to meet with us, the ones that we've been able to meet with, as well as just taking time out of their schedules to be here today. We understand their concerns, and look forward to continuing to work with them and through some of their concerns and issues as this project hopefully moves forward with a detailed site plan. I do want to highlight that this application does still require a detailed site plan beyond this preliminary plan of subdivision. With that, Mr. Chairman, just real briefly, Timberlake Homes, who's the applicant contract purchaser, they're a privately held home building company that has been involved in the development and construction of residential homes locally in Prince George's County and regionally in Maryland and Delaware for many decades. Frank's Nursery, as the prior use of the property is known, has existed and until going out of business, operated for many decades on the subject property. During that time, the area around Frank's Nursery has dramatically changed. Major infrastructure and development has occurred around the subject property, as highlighted and summarized by Mr. Heath and depicted on your screen. In preparing for this application, in this case, I was reminded to go back to some of the wonderful layers that we have on PG Atlas with respect to the historical imagery. And just going back 45 years ago to 1977, I can do that math quickly since I'm 44, but going back just 45 years ago, the intersection alone at this property at 193 and 450 looked nothing like it does today, and that's a mere 40 some years ago. 193 didn't even extend north, and it certainly wasn't a divided arterial roadway. Same with 450. In addition, over 1,100 acres of the prior turf farm was redeveloped pursuant to the MXC, the mixed-use community zone, is now known as Fairwood. That project, and more on that in a minute, but that project consists of is approved for 1,799 units, over 350,000 square feet of commercial, retail, office, institutional uses. To the north, there's existing office and a gas station. Bell Station, just to the north of that, was recently approved for a 68,000 square foot commercial retail project. Big box stores like Home Depot and Lowe's have come online over the last many years, which really had a significant negative impact on the survivability of this particular use. Two of the three family members that own and operate the property and operated Frank's Nursery have since deceased. The owners now wish to sell, but not just sell to anyone. They've chosen to sell to the applicant who will provide a context-sensitive transitional development. The world has changed around the property very significantly, and this property, for all intents and purposes until now, has been left behind. Turning to the project itself, it has been thoughtfully designed to be context-sensitive and appropriate with development in the surrounding area. As Mr. Heath mentioned, and as I've briefly mentioned, to the north is commercially zoned land developed with 2 office buildings, a gas station, and recently approved detailed site plan for up to 68,000 square feet of additional commercial retail. To the east is the Fairwood community, a planned mixed-use community consisting of more than 120,000 square feet of retail space that's been completed. 12 of the 14 condo buildings totaling 213 attached or multifamily units in the Delight have been completed. 397 townhome units are completed, including 87 in the Sanctuary, 75 in the Choice, 157 in the Retreat, and 78 in the Bounty. All 1,220 single-family detached units of various sizes have been completed. All 20 townhomes in the Delight and 45,000 square feet for medical office buildings have been completed as of 2021. It's a very large mixed-use planned community, a very successfully large mixed-use planned community. To the west along 450 is single-family attached, which is accessed from 450, and single-family detached, which is not accessed by Maryland 450. Again, the development facilitates a thoughtful transition from the intersection of 2 master plan arterial roadways, which is the second highest classification in the master plan of transportation, to the large planned mixed-use community to the east and the commercial office to the north and east. The development proposes 35 parcels, 200 lots that will provide open space, private roads, sidewalks, and private amenities. Open space, I want to hit on the open space for a second. After we dedicate the required dedication along Maryland 450, There'll be 12.37 acres of open space, or 56% of the site will remain as open space. Although not applicable, utilizing or looking at section 276405 of the new zoning ordinance, which provides for the open space set-asides, the most conservative application of the open space set-asides would require a 20% open space set-aside. Applying 2760405 to this project, which is again not applicable, but just for the point of this hearing, I thought it was worth mentioning. We would have over 34.9, almost 35% of the site would count for open space set aside. More than 15% of any conservative estimation that would be required. Moreover, the project meets the targeted strategy of the 2019 Comprehensive Housing Strategy, Housing Opportunities for All. It encourages new context-sensitive development that expands housing types to serve the county's diverse population and distinct geographical characters. It right-sizes housing investment to meet the needs of the county and its diverse population. The strategy also recognizes that, and the project facilitates that a wider range of housing opportunities should be implemented in the county. In addition, Plan 2035 at page 110 provides a 25-year forecast in the established communities for which this property is located. And it provides that 12,600 new residential units alone will be needed for the 25-year forecast. We are far from that number. I want to turn to the applicant's efforts in outreach. We've had two to three meetings with the Fairwood Homeowners Association Board, dating back to 2021, over a year ago. On September 20th, 2022, we had a meeting with the Glendale Citizens Association. On October 6th, 2022, we provided very detailed answers to a 27 questionnaire that was provided to us by the by the Fairwood Homeowners Association. We also provided a rendered site plan and the traffic impact analysis at that time. On October 13, 2022, we had another virtual meeting with the Fairwood HOA, this time with members of the community, for which over 70 residents attended that meeting. On October 17th, we sent Mr. Sean Suhar on behalf of the Gabriel's Run, the Fairwood questionnaire and the traffic impact analysis. And on October 5th, we sent Mr. Suhar a copy of the preliminary plan of subdivision after reaching out to Gabriel's Run to gauge its desire and interest to connect and meet. As the board correctly noted and staff correctly indicated, the pursuant to section 24-1904C, the adequate public facilities has been analyzed, tested, and determined to be adequate for this project pursuant to 24-4503 of the subdivision regulations. The adequacy certificate ADQ-2022-020 was approved earlier this month, which unequivocally demonstrates that transportation, parks and recreation, police, fire, rescue, and schools are all adequate. The required findings under Division 3 of Subtitle 24 have all been met. That's provided for in your staff report, as well as all the backup, finding 7 in particular at page 9. And just to conclude, Mr. Chairman, until I have a chance to provide any further rebuttal, I just want to mention that the preliminary plan, we believe, and staff agrees, represents development that's in keeping with the goals of the applicable planning documents, policies, and recommendations therein, is context sensitive given its surroundings, does not conflict with the use types that have developed around it, is located in an area where public facilities exist and are adequate and meet the needs of the residents, and the response to specific targeted strategies of the comprehensive housing strategy. For all those reasons and the reasons that are provided in your record, to include any backup that we have provided, we respectfully request the board's approval of this application. And one final thought, I just wanted to supplement Commissioner Washington's question, and I would look for Mr. Heath to confirm my understanding. But in Applicant's Exhibit 1, we did, as Ms. Washington correctly pointed out, we did request a revision to finding number 10, which is captured in staff's Exhibit 1. However, we also requested a revision to finding 11, related to the tree canopy coverage, which mirrors the basis for the revision to finding 10. The revision to finding 11, however, I did not see in staff's exhibit 1. And just for consistency, we wanted to make sure that that too was captured as a requested revision to findings pursuant to applicant's exhibit 1. With that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your indulgence. I appreciate the board's time and attention in this matter, and I look forward to answering any questions or addressing any further comments on rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. Before I turn to the board for any questions, Mr. Heath, can you respond to Mr. Tedesco's last comment direction to you?
Yes. So in regard to that additional revision to the findings, same with that one as well. Both of them apply to the MXT zone instead of the RE zone. So both are capturing the same thing, but I forgot to mention that one.
So you are in fact agreeing with the proposed change to finding
Yes.
11? Okay.
Yes,
Thank
we're in agreement with that, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So, commissioners, questions for the applicant? No questions, then I will now turn to members of the public. We have a few members who signed up to speak in this matter. As a general rule, we'll be giving individuals testifying on behalf of themselves 3 minutes to speak. And if there are attorneys representing clients or other authorized representatives of organizations, we'll have you with 5 minutes to speak, so you have a little bit more time. When I call your name, please give us your address and identify whether you're here on behalf of yourself or if you're representing a individual or if you're representing an organization. And if for attorneys, please give us the name of the individuals or organizations that you're representing as well. For others who are seeking to speak on behalf of an organization, if you just be reminded that our practice is that we are looking for duly elected officers of a civic or homeowners association or some kind of authorization that you are authorized to speak on behalf of the organization. And we'll be flexible with that, but that is the direction that we're going to be heading to tighten up our processes. So I'm going to go through the list of folks who speak. I'm going to reference what I believe your the organization that you represent is. And again, individuals who are representing organizations or attorneys will have 5 minutes to speak. Otherwise, you'll have 3 minutes. So with that, I'll start with Mr. Suhar, who is the attorney who wrote the letter on behalf of the Gabriel's Run HOA, I believe. Mr. Suhar, you're on the line?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Okay. If you could identify yourself for the record and who you're representing, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you and good morning, Chairman Shapiro and the Planning Board Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to be heard this morning. My name is Sean Suhar. I'm an attorney with the firm of Nagel and Zaller. Our firm represents 2 large estate lot communities, the Gabriel's Run Homeowners Association and the Wingate Homeowners Association. Both existing community associations in the vicinity of the property upon which Mr. Tedesco's client, the applicant, is requesting a preliminary plan of subdivision. May I proceed, Chairman Shapiro?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I submitted written comments on behalf of Gabriel's Run in opposition to the preliminary plan for subdivision, which seeks to subdivide the property into 200 townhome lots and a commercial lot. I stated that the applicant's request will have negative impacts upon traffic, schools, property values, and other problems and issues that I identified. My client is also strongly opposed to granting a variation to the required 150-foot setback regulations, which is being requested by the applicant, because they have not demonstrated the existence of an extraordinary hardship, which is critical. Although Mr. Tedesco filed a response to dismiss all of my client's concerns, I believe Mr. Tedesco's response actually highlights my client's problems with the applicant's request. Pursuant to the technical staff report, the property is zoned for residential real estate residential estate, which permits large lot estate subdivisions containing lots approximately 1 acre or larger. The applicant's property should be developed as such in the RE zone. But as Mr. Tedesco points out in his response and as discussed today, the applicant claims their property is subject to the MXT zone, which is a mixed use zone and transportation oriented zone due to a district council rule. This requires the property be located near a major intersection and be adjacent to a mixed use community. So Mr. Tedesco's response outlines how the applicant checked off all the requirements by including townhomes and a commercial lot on the property. And Mr. Tedesco's response in the technical staff report at pages 18 and 19, I believe, highlight that the property is bounded on 2 sides by arterial roads, Annapolis Road and Enterprise Road, which, as I stated, are required for the MXT zoning to essentially try and replace the RE zoning. You see, the arterial roads allegedly provide a pathway for the applicant to get to the MXT zoning and develop townhome lots or townhomes on a lot when the property is really zoned residential estate. Pursuant to section 24-121A4 of the county code, however, lots adjacent to existing arterial roadways are permitted to be platted with a minimum setback of 150 feet. In his response, Mr. Tedesco states that his client is once again requesting an exception to that regulation. You see, the applicant is now crying foul that the roadways, which allegedly provide a pathway to townhome development in the residential estate zone, are causing a hardship on them due to the 150-foot setback requirement. Essentially, the applicant has created its own hardship. On one hand, they rely upon the arterial roads to try and get to the MXT zoning, but on the other hand, they complain that the 150-foot setback imposed by the arterial roads will cause a hardship on them. But you can't have it both ways. Once again, the applicant wants an exception to the rule, and this time cites section 24-113A of the county code, which provides that where the planning board finds that an extraordinary hardship or practical difficulties may result from strict compliance with the subdivision regulations, i.e. the 150-foot setback in this case, the planning board may, but is not required to, may approve variations from these subdivision regulations so that substantial justice may be done. And then that statute goes on. The planning board is not required to approve the variation. Mr. Tedesco's response devoted a lot of time toward addressing traffic and noise studies, but what he fails to address is the extraordinary hardship, which is critical to considering a variation to the regulation. He refers to pages 20 to 21 of the technical staff report, which merely states that the development will be limited because the property is bound by 2 arterial roads, which impose the 150-foot setback. I counted 54 lots that fall within the 150-foot setback. Members of the planning board, that does not present a hardship. You see, the applicant wants to maximize the density and number of lots to 200 to maximize their profits. But if they lose 54 lots out of 200, they'd be left with 146 lots. And again, this is if the MXT zoning is even applicable. But when I ask, where is the hardship? They will just get to develop a few less lots if the MXT zoning is permitted here.
Mr. Sierra, you're at your time. If you can wrap up.
Thank you. I just have a couple more. Thank you very much, Chairman Shapiro. I'm wrapping it up now. I also want to say that in Mr. Tedesco's response, he claims school sufficiency and claims that the roads provide an acceptable amount of service for traffic. But I consistently hear that schools are overcrowded, and I see trailers being installed on school properties to handle more classrooms. I question the sufficiency, and many people constantly complain that traffic congestion is getting worse. Enough is enough already. I encourage the planning board today to deny the request for subdivision as it is currently presented, and deny the request for variation of the 150-foot setback regulation. Thank you very much for allowing me to be heard and for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Suhar. I appreciate it. Commissioners, I'm going to hold Mr. Suhar's thoughts for a second. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. And I think Mr. Suhar, what he brought forward, and we may hear it from other folks, it may be helpful for us to be clear about what is before us. So this is my understanding of this. And Mr. Warner, Mr. Heath, and Mr. Hunt, you may chime in as well. But this is the RE zone before us. This is not an MXT zone before us. It's an RE zone with a text amendment. The text amendment essentially allows for all of the MXT uses, but it is the RE zone. There's some exceptions to that. For the MXT uses, no MXT uses that would be allowed by special exception, no gas stations. But other than that, it's still the RE zone with the MXT uses, and townhouses are a permitted use within that. Did I capture that right, Mr. Warner, Mr. Heath, Mr. Hunt?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Suhar, I certainly don't want to feel like I'm taking the opportunity to just flat out correct you, right? But I hear you loud and clear, and it's confusing, right? Because this is changes that have been made that may not be that transparent to the public, but that is what is before us. What is before us is the RE zone with those MXT uses, with those exclusions, okay? So I just want to be clear about that, that's the piece. And then the other piece that you mentioned, and I'm sure we'll hear it from other folks as well, is related to the adequacy, from the certificate of adequacy. And this is a new process for us, but again, it limits what is before us as the planning board for this case. And so we are mindful that it's a bit of a new process, and it requires some education, a little bit for us, but also for the public as well. So I'm taking the advantage of this opportunity after your testimony just to be clear with what's before us, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Suhar. So questions for Mr. Suhar? If not, I'll move on. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I don't have questions for Mr. Suhar, but I wanted to dovetail off of what you asked Mr. Warner, if I may.
Please.
I want Mr. Warner, if he could better explain the issue of the variance.
The variation.
The variation of 150 feet.
Right. So in terms of what is the applicant requesting in terms of a variation?
I know what he's requesting, but what role do we have in that?
Okay. David Warner, Principal Counsel. When an applicant requests a variation from the subdivision regulations, the planning board is required to make a decision as to whether that variation should be granted. Mr. Suhar correctly identifies the standard that the planning board must find, which is that the requirements of the subdivision regulations have created an extraordinary hardship or practical difficulty for the owner's applicant. And then there are, I believe, 5 findings that the planning board needs to make. And staff evaluates the variation requests, as they have on pages 20 and 21 of your staff report. And they look at each one of those findings and identify the facts that either support a recommendation for the variation or recommend denial. And in this case, staff has looked at each one of those findings and recommends approval based on the facts as laid out in the staff report. So this is a decision for the planning board to make. And again, it's a variation from the subdivision regulations. Now, this property is governed by the the zoning ordinance as well, and it is in the RE zone. But this particular property is subject to specific provisions that say the general requirements of the RE zone, such as bulk and lot sizes and things of that nature, do not apply, but instead the requirements of the MXP zone apply. So it is a little confusing, but the variation request is a request for a variation from the subdivision regulations, and it's the subdivision regulations that apply this 150-foot lot depth requirement when you are alongside an arterial road. It really doesn't have anything to do with the zoning. It's a subdivision requirement.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Commissioner Geraldo, other questions?
No, not at this time. No, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Suhar? If not, I'll move down through our list. Next, we have Yonette Thomas. I believe she signed up on behalf of the Wingate HOA. Ms. Thomas, are you there?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having me.
You can identify yourself for the record, and since you're representing an organization, you'll have 5 minutes to speak, okay?
Okay, so thank you for having me. This is actually my first appearance at something like this, and I hope it's the last, but who knows? I'm here on behalf of the Wingate
We're
Homeowners.
happy to have you, Ms. Thomas. I just want to say thank you for taking the time, and we will be patient with a newbie, but take your time and say what you got to say.
Okay, I'm here on behalf of the Wingate Homeowners Association. I'm the current president of the HOA, and Wingate is within a 2-mile radius of the proposed development. And we want to be on record. My fellow homeowners have sent me here to be on record supporting development in and around our community. And it was really good to hear Mr. Tedesco refer to the 45-year development of this area. I personally have lived here for 30 of those 45 years, and I'm happy to see the transformation. I remember going to Frank's and designing my garden, etc. However, my community is very anxious. In fact, they're quite anxious about the 150-foot lot depth variation and have asked me to make that known here. Of course, I'm now hearing the explanations and the discussions. It was good. I took notes so I could take it back to them. What we want to request is a measured, supportive approach to this development. Specifically, that the county and the board and developers pay attention to issues related to community well-being and community collective efficacy. We would like to ask that attention be paid to 3 items in relation to this 150-foot lot depth variation. Of course, recognizing the caveat is here, given the explanations I just heard, this may be counter. I'll just say what they are. The 3 are aesthetics, maximize green space opportunities, and noise and traffic reduction. Those are the 3 things why community is particularly interested in. For aesthetics, we're concerned about packing townhomes into an area simply, and forgive me, this is not intended to offend, but simply to maximize profits for developers and their attorneys. We ask that townhomes be sized in a way that reflects the homes already in the community. Just like they do in Rockville and Potomac. This is why we've moved to Prince George's County. We love this community. And the county executive is after us, beautify, stay. And I'm trying to keep my homeowners to stay in this community. And on the second item, for green space opportunities, we ask that instead of building all the way to the intersection, the developers create a buffer of green space to beautify, support smaller wildlife, reduce noise, and maintain the green community feel that we currently have. Third, for noise reduction and traffic reduction, we ask that attention be paid to the already congested rush hour traffic on 193. And if you live here, it's like we're on Rockville Pike. We who live in the community experience this daily, and more so when school is in session. School buses I look at Duval High School, they're operating out of trailers on the compound. We ask that you pay attention to things like that and help us maintain our community feel and help us to maximize our quality of life here. So my community and I see a lack of aesthetics, 1, green space opportunities, 2, and noise and traffic reduction, 3, as creating a hardship for us. That's what I present this morning, and I ask your particular attention to these 3 items. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thomas. I appreciate your time. Questions for Ms. Thomas? Okay, we'll move on to Jill Oliver. I believe she signed up on behalf
Chair
of the
Shapiro?
Yes.
This is David Warner. I think it would be helpful if I expanded a little bit more on what I told Mr. Giraldo.
Feel free. Take the time
now. Like I said, the variation request is a request for a variation from the requirements of the subdivision regulations, which require a lot depth of 150 feet for property that is adjacent to arterial roadways. The reason for this lot depth requirement is to ensure that the homes eventually built on those lots are not so close to the roads that they will be affected by the noise from those roads. So in other words, this variation is wholly focused on the development. It is not, the lot depth requirement has nothing to do with offsite impact. This is a lot depth requirement intended to ensure the homes that will eventually be built on this property will not be impacted by the noise from the roadway. And then you can see that in the staff report, all the analysis is whether this variation is an undue hardship for the developer of this property because of what impact it would have on the developer. So the other issues being addressed by the testimony here are also, of course, very important, but they really don't relate to the variation in this particular case, which is wholly based on the impact that the arterial roadways will have on the properties being subdivided.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. And that was my concern. My concern is there's a 150-foot depth requirement is for the protection of the residents. And so
the residents who will be living there, right?
Right, exactly. And so what happens is we're being asked to approve of a variation, which we don't know how it will impact the new residents of that community. And the reason that I guess it's being requested is because the developer has this piece of lot property and they want to maximize the number of units. And I understand that. But so how do we balance the rights of the new homeowners that are going to purchase the property and be subjected to the noise from both roads vis-a-vis the developer who wants to maximize the number of homes? And that's something that we have to decide. Am I right?
Correct. And the evidence in the staff report, as well as that provided by the testimony you'll hear and by Mr. Tedesco, argues why the 150 depth requirement is a hardship, because in Mr. Tedesco's evidence that he has submitted, there will not be noise impacts on properties if we have if there is allowed to be a lower depth, a reduced depth. And so his argument is that the requirement that the subdivision regulations are trying to achieve, which is to ensure property owners aren't impacted by noise from the arterials, can be achieved even if the lot depths are shorter or, less depth. I don't know how you say that correctly, but So that's the evidence. He's saying you're requiring 150-foot depth, but what you're trying to achieve won't be achieved by 150 or 70. So why put this hardship on the property owner to have 150-foot depth if at 70 feet or whatever the depth is that he's requesting, you'll still achieve the goals of the subdivision regulations. That's his argument. But you're hearing arguments opposed to that as well. So that's where you focus your analysis.
Okay, so the reason I'm sensitive to this is I used to chair the Board of Airport Zoning Appeal, and it always came up that developers would try to come in and say, well, we can build closer or within the zone because we can protect by doing X, Y, and Z. And so what I'm trying to understand here is if it's been established that you need 150 foot, if that's what's been established, that's the law. So what is the evidence to show that less than 150 foot is still going to protect the homeowner?
So I want to hold that for a second because there's a couple of things, Commissioner Geraldo. First of all, I think this is more along the lines of our deliberation.
Okay.
And I think it's something that we very much do want to talk about. You may have questions for staff related to that too. Mr. Tedesco has his hand up. Mr. Tedesco, I would ask you to hold any response to this to rebuttal or your summation because we're going to hear from other folks as well, okay? So now, Commissioner Geraldo, if you do want to direct a question like that to staff now or whenever you think is appropriate, feel free.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Staff's rationale is they believe that was that the applicant's argument was adequate, and they concur.
So let me just one thing for staff that's related to what Commissioner Geraldo is asking about. So in the staff report, under the noise analysis section, it talks about a noise study and the levels of decibels that are being measured in there. It says that the noise study that was submitted by the applicant did not take into account topography and a couple of other elements that maybe should have been addressed. So I would just like to know from Mr. Heath, if staff is now okay after having consulted with the applicant, how they think that the noise study is adequate enough and whether or not the topography or the other things that were mentioned are not as much of a concern at the location that the applicant is proposing, just to make sure that we can rectify that. Like if staff is in agreement now, I just want to know, like, okay, what changed in terms of evidence that the applicant provided that would make them feel a little more comfortable with that. Because I think Commissioner Geraldo brings up a point that, like, at some stage the 150-foot measure was put in place because of a concern. I'm not sure whether or not 150 feet is the right number. And oftentimes we see legislation that comes before us that's just kind of haphazard. They just put a number down on paper because that just seems like it makes sense. But it may not measurably be the right number. And in certain situations, the numbers can vary. I live pretty close to a railroad, but we've got different kinds of windows on one side of the house and other kind of noise mitigation that actually reduces the decibels in our house, and you can't really hear it a whole lot. So I think there are times and situations where there are exceptions that can be made, but I just want to know from the staff what kind of got you over the hurdle and made you feel a little bit more comfortable with the concerns that you raised in the staff report before.
Yes, it's Antoine Heath from the subdivision section for the record. So there's a certain threshold we look at when evaluating this. So we look at 65 decibels for outdoor spaces, recreational spaces, and 45 decibels for interior spaces. And in this case, the applicant provided a study that showed a noise contour where the 65 decibel line is outside of the property, outside of the residential lots. However, we wanted the applicant to go further and do further analysis at the detailed site plan stage should it go forward. That takes into account the combination of noise from both Annapolis Road and Enterprise Road, as well as the topography that could affect the noise. So there is a condition that we provided in the staff report that says the applicant has to provide a noise study at the time of detailed site plan that gives that further analysis. And if that analysis, we determine that it's not being met adequately, then the applicant would have to provide mitigation, whether that's in the form of structural or architectural details or berms along the side of both Annapolis Road or Enterprise Road. So because we don't evaluate architecture at this particular time, that's why we provided that condition for it to be evaluated further at the time of detailed site plan.
Ms. Connor, you have something to add, or did Mr. Heath cover it?
Mr. Heath colored it.
So I have a further question, Mr. Do we know what time of the day the noise study was conducted?
I'm not 100% sure. I believe that was in the applicant study, but you'd have to confirm with them. What they provided was an estimate of 2027 traffic analysis that was given to them. So we wanted to see analysis that also takes into account the existing conditions today and not necessarily an estimate for down the road. So I'm not 100% sure what time those counts or analysis was taken during the day.
No, I'm speaking specifically about the noise analysis. So
yes.
So does the noise analysis study state when that noise analysis was done was it at midnight? Was it at rush hour? Because I think all of these factors are important. I mean, to see whether or not the 150 is sufficient or it can be lessened.
If I may,
Sherry, I think we're getting some background noise from your phone. Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
We'll live with it. It's fine. Go ahead.
All right. This is Sherry Cutter for the record with the subdivision section. The noise analysis that was provided at this stage was based on computations using the existing and future traffic projections and the speed limit in the area. So it is an estimated noise line based off of those factors. What we have provided in the findings of the technical staff report and as the conditions of approval would require that the applicant at the time of detailed site plan provide further analysis and take actual measurements, and those would be at a day-night average. So it would average the noise throughout a 24-hour period and put those into the study for actual measurements that incorporate the actual conditions, topography, and combined traffic noise from both roadways, which isn't really accounted for in the methodology used in the calculations. I would just add that we also use this methodology ourselves in our department to estimate noise, but the future traffic study to be conducted at DSP would account for that and incorporate that overall day-night average.
You're on mute, Commissioner Giraldo.
So no study has been done. Basically, it's just estimates.
It'll be done at DSP, right?
No. Okay, thank you.
Other questions for staff? If not, we'll go back. And Ms. Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, just to be clear, for the larger units that are actually kind of adjacent to the roadway where we're looking for this setback, what is the smallest setback that's in there that we would have from the plans? Do you know, Mr. Heath? I think
you're on mute, Mr. Heath.
You said the smallest setback that would be required?
or the smallest setback that's actually there if you were to like measure with the the proposed site plans. You said that the contours of like the noise study said that it was outside of the lots. And I just wanted to find out like what's the minimum distance. So if it's not 150, like it might be 120 and some of them and 70. For, like, the smallest one.
Yeah, so it's about around approximately about 60 feet in some places where the distance between the residential lots and the frontage between Annapolis Road and Enterprise Road, which is pretty consistent throughout the entire boundary of the property. But if you were to look at the variation slide, it'll show you where that line is over top of the property.
So hold that 1 sec. Mr. Tedesco is on the line. Mr. Tedesco, I don't want this to slip into either rebuttal or summation, but do you have an answer to this question as well?
Yes. So in responding to the answer, although I have a whole lot to say about this discussion.
I know you do, but hold it.
I'm doing my best, Mr. Chairman. There are HOA parcels separating the fee simple townhouse lots from the property boundary adjacent to the arterial roadways. Those HOA parcels range in width from 54.4 feet up to 56 feet. The fee simple townhouse lots are 84 feet long. So when you combine those, it's 140 foot presumed lot depth to the property line of the right of way. And it's not a setback. It's not a setback. We keep saying setback. It's not, but I'll stop there because I'm going to get too far into rebuttal. But it's okay. What's provided is 140 feet.
What's before us is not setback. What's before us is lot depth.
Is lot depth. So if you add the lots plus the HOA parcels, it's 140 feet approximate.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. Commissioners, questions for staff, or is there an additional clarification question that Mr. Tedesco might help us with?
Yeah, just Mr. Tedesco, is the 140 feet, and I apologize if I was probably the one who said setback. So I apologize.
You were, and everyone's been incorrectly saying setback, which is, it's not a setback.
I don't feel as bad since others joined the fun. The 140 feet, is that from the street to the beginning of the lot boundary, or is that from the street to the structure itself?
No, that's from the property boundary right away, not from the face of curb of the arterial roadways. It's even, the distance is even farther if we were to measure it from the actual curb and or asphalt of the actual arterial roads. This is just from property line to property line, including the HOA parcel.
Okay, so it would be deeper if you measured it to the actual roadway or curb side.
I don't have that, but yeah, the right-of-way boundary is typically wider than the actual improved roads, although this road is built to its maximum arterial classification.
Okay, and then I assume that there's additional depth then from the property line to where the structures would actually be themselves.
Absolutely.
It's like on the diagrams, that's like beyond 10 feet.
Correct. There's a, like I mentioned, there's a 50 up to 56 foot HOA parcel. Then the property of the townhomes lots, which is 84 feet long. And then the sticks of houses would sit therein, and all the houses would have, backyards going to their property line, with the HOA parcel sitting between that and then the property line of the right of way. Then you've got some distance of the right of way, because we're going to be required to put sidewalks within the SHA right of way along the frontage, subject to SHA. Then you get to the travel lanes.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. Thank you.
So you've got, what I know is you have a 10-foot sidewalk that has to be done, right? On the outs, is that right?
Within the SHA right of way, correct.
Right, okay. So let's make it real simple. Are you saying that it's going to be at least 140 feet from the arterial roadway to the actual structure?
It's going to be well beyond that.
Okay. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
It's going to be well beyond that because you have the road, then you have SHA will require a tree plant, presumably, and then the sidewalk. That's going to be upwards of 10 to 15 feet at a minimum. Then you've got the HOA parcel at 56 feet. Then you've got the townhouse lot at 84 feet long, and then you've got the stick sitting somewhat in the middle with a backyard. So it's going to be well beyond 150 feet from the home to the road.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Other questions at this point before we move on to the next speaker? Thank you. Ms. Thomas, thank you again for your presentation. Much appreciated. Next, we have Jill Oliver. She signed off behalf of the Fairwood community. We have Ms. Oliver. You can identify yourself for the record.
Excuse me.
And you will have 5 minutes since you're representing the Fairwood community.
Hi, I'm Jill Oliver. I'm a resident of Fairwood. I'm at 12713 My Molly's Pride Drive. I am speaking on behalf of the concerned citizens of Prince George's County District 4 and surrounding areas, as well as on behalf of my fellow Fairwood neighbors who've asked me to share their concerns, who could not be here today, some of which did submit testimony. We have several concerns that we want to share. Some of them have already been stated, but I'll state them again. One is the concern around infrastructure, traffic, and safety concerns that we feel have not been addressed. The expectation of an influx of traffic associated to this proposed planned development will easily bring over 1,000 additional cars to the Fairwood entry point, causing potential safety hazards. As only one entry and exit is planned for this development. The 450 and 193 corridors are already congested with vehicles entering or cutting through the Fairwood community. This significant increase in traffic will pose a danger to residents who drive and walk in the community. Fairwood is specifically in the surrounding neighbors are very sensitive to traffic issues because we've experienced several tragic traffic-related deaths in and around the community. Most recently, during the summer, 2 Fairwood residents died in a traffic-related accident right at the location of the planned development. The use of Fairwood's name to brand the development is also a concern, as this will potentially confuse potential buyers and send a false message that they are buying into the Fairwood community. Unless the developer agrees to become part of the community and abide by the laws, covenants, and management of Fairwood Community Association, many of the residents believe the name should be changed. Fairwood's community's brand is a high quality brand, and we don't want our reputation tarnished or property values negatively impacted by development that doesn't live up to those standards. There is also a concern around the large quantity of townhouse. Much has been discussed already about that. We are also in agreement that the number of townhomes crammed into a small lot will not provide sufficient parking access points or amenities for the potential buyers and potentially cause disruption to adjacent Fairwood residents and others. As far as preservation of historic trees and plant specimens, it is the desire of our group and residents surrounding the development to see the unique and irreplaceable historic trees and plant specimens conserved, if at all possible. I also have a question that I would like to get relative to the text amendment that caused or allowed for this development to be brought forward. I would like to know when that text amendment was approved, who brought it which county council person submitted that text amendment, and was a hearing held related to that text amendment? Because obviously this is the first time many residents around that development have even heard of that, that this text amendment existed and caused change in the zoning, which in turn has caused allowed this development to put forth a larger number of townhouses. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. I appreciate you taking the time. Any questions for Ms. Oliver? Now we'll move on. Next, we have Mr. Carlton Hart, who has signed up on behalf of the Homehurst Council.
Excuse me, is someone going to answer my questions about the text amendment, or how does that work?
I'll do you the courtesy of it, which is that it's the district council's actions, not ours. I may be able to get staff to get us that information right away. Hold on, somebody's coming. It was CB. How about that? It's CB 21. It was sponsored by Councilmember Derek Davis. It was approved on November 16th, 2021. That's according to our staff. That's not our actions. It's actions by the district council. But I hope that answers that question for you, Ms. Oliver.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Ms. Oliver? If not, I'll turn to Mr. Hart, Carlton Hart. How are you, sir?
Ms. Oliver, one thing real quick.
Yeah, hold on one sec. Mr. Hart, yeah, hold it, and we have a question from Commissioner.
So she raised one issue about like the naming of the HOA. So I just wanted to double check. It's kind of a random question, but I wanted to see whether or not her HOA association has any like copyright or trademark protections on the name themselves.
Ms. Oliver, you still on the line?
Yes, I am. I can't answer that question. I know this is an issue that has been raised by residents. So that's something that the HOA will need to look into. And I'm actually the vice president of the HOA, so I will follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver, again. All right, we'll turn it back to Mr. Hart. Mr. Hart, you can introduce yourself for the record.
Will do.
And it's good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you as well. Good afternoon, Board Chair Shapiro. I guess it's still morning. Good morning, Board Chair Shapiro, Vice Chair Bailey, Commissioners, and Prince George's County Planning Board staff. My name is Carlton Hart, and I'm a 20-year resident of the county and the current president of the Homehurst South Civic Association. Our neighborhood is located approximately a half mile south of this proposed development along Enterprise Road. And while I understand that some of the things that I bring up are a little bit premature to raise some of these issues, I would nevertheless like to raise them because I think that it'll be helpful as you all are moving forward. And I'll note that we're not either in support or opposition to the development. These are just some comments for you. These concerns are regarding the land use, environmental protection, and transportation. So regarding land use, I understand that there is this commercial use that is on the eastern portion of the site. And there was some discussion about this being a fast food use. I just think that we need to think about what that is. I think we have sufficient fast food use and maybe some other type of use would be helpful for the site. Regarding environmental protection, the eastern side of the site seems to include steep slopes, which, again, this is just kind of looking over at the plans. They may require, very high retaining walls. I know that the site plan has not been determined and that you're looking at subdivision regulations, but it may be something to think about for that eastern section as they are the ones that are closest to where the Fairwood development is located. And then moving on to transportation, there are a few concerns, one with just pedestrian movement and another with vehicular movements. Regarding the pedestrian movements, you may be aware that pedestrian amenities like sidewalks are really not existent in some areas of the county. And while the county has made great strides increasing the number of sidewalks to improve pedestrian safety, I would like to see some sidewalks really on this corner but in particular, the connections to other facilities in the around in this vicinity. And I understand that, you know, the developers are not required to put sidewalks in for the to make the connection to Fairwood Parkway to the east or north, and to Partella Road, which is to the south along 193. But I would encourage them to look to make these connections, in particular because there are just a lot of pedestrian safety concerns as I've been driving through this area, particularly at night. You know, lack of visibility can lead to some unfortunate circumstances. The concern regarding vehicular movements is really about turning movements. In particular, left-hand turning movements out of this site would be along the east entrance would be of particular concern. As we all have noted, 450 is a fairly busy road, and I'm just, you know, understanding that left-hand movements can be can cause some problems, especially this location, which has quite a bit of traffic moving through here, going to Fairwoods and points to the east, and then going to points to the west, like Vista Gardens. Those are really the main comments. I would, on a personal note, like to congratulate Board Chair Shapiro on his position as chair of the Prince George's County Planning Board. We have worked together several years ago now in a different capacity, but good to see you here. And I'll leave it there. And I don't know if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Good to see you as well. And I'm sure that the applicant has been taking notes, and perhaps they can address some of these issues on rebuttal as well, or in their summation. So are there questions for Mr. Hart, commissioners? Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Good to see you again. Next, we have three individuals who signed up to speak. We'll start with Mr. Charles Johnson. Mr. Johnson, you on the line? If not, we'll come back. Oh, yeah, we can hear him. Mr. Johnson, we can hear you. Yes, we don't see you, but we can hear you. But take it away. If you could identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Okay, my name's Charles Leo Johnson, and I stay a stone's throw away from formerly Frank's nursery. I'm right around the corner, and what I've been listening to all day really disturbs me. You know, I can't believe that it's on the books that we're going to potentially insert 200 families in a 3-mile radius area, and I hear the lies about they have the public facilities available, they want housing for all. I'd just like to digress 1 second, because I know I just have 3 minutes. What is going to be the cost, the average cost of these units? Can someone tell me that now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can, Ms. Jones, but this is a time for you to talk, not to ask questions, respectfully. So if you continue with your testimony, the applicant may have answers to your questions later on down the line. Okay.
Okay.
But please continue.
Right. Okay, understood.
Thank you very much, sir.
I kind of believe I'm spinning my wheels here, because I put 2 and 2 together, and with the changes to the Amex zone and the RE zones, and it's been initiated by the district council itself, I think it's already, you know, the fix is already in. And I don't care how many people complain, those 200 homes are going to go there, okay? And I have 3 minutes is not, I can't sum up in 3 minutes how I feel, because I think this would not be done in Rockville, Potomac, McLean. Though you won't allow that there, but you got a little black community here, single family detached homes. Let's jam them in there. They paid $8 million for that swath of land, because tentatively can make 50 to 100 million. And then they're going to be on their way back to their homes, you know, they 2 and 3, 4, 5 acre homes, okay? And they leave us with jammed in with 200 families, all trying to make ends meet. I feel personally I did destroying it. And like I said, I think the fix is already in. So what I might throw a for sale sign right out front of my home. I stay on 122. If you want to know, I'm right around the corner on Lisboro Street. And I'm really fuming behind, hey, we say we have a say so, but if you give me 2 more weeks, I can have every homeowner in this area in a 1 to 2 mile radius sign a petition saying no. But I don't think that's going to be sufficient. because I think the council members already got their mind made up. They weren't elected, they were appointed, and all that's in cahoots with. Now, I shouldn't say cahoots, that's the wrong word. I'm being pejorative. But I'm thinking that, hey, the fix is already in. And no matter what I say, it's not going to change anybody's mind. And I'll end on that note. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I appreciate you taking the time to make your voice heard. Next, we have Mr. Talib Al-Salam. Mr. Salam, we see you on the line, and I assume we'll be able to hear you. If you could identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. My name is Talib Al-Salam. I moved here 4917 Smithwick Lane. So I'm in the Holmhurst community, right behind Frank's. To just start off my remarks, I heard a question about trademark. I just want to make clear for the record that generally trademark fair use occurs when an accused infringer can show it did not use the mark as a trademark, the use is descriptive of the goods and services, and it used the mark fairly and in good faith. So it has to meet all those conditions in order for it to have fair use. I don't think it meets those conditions. I think that the representative from Fairwood should, definitely, think about that point. But aside from trademark rule, it's a matter of respect. And I think not only, and the person may not have intended it, but there should be some respect to the Fairwood community. Because it is a community, there's a reason why people like myself, professionals, college graduates and so forth, move to this area. So that's the first thing. I have 4 key issues. One is with 200 townhomes, I read that there's an expectation of 578 residents moving in those 200 townhomes. That's not realistic, right? We're talking more about 800 people. Because I looked at the floor plans of Savannah Twin and Savannah Town, which are townhome communities that Timberlake has, and that's the real calculation. So what that means is about 300 more vehicles contributed into traffic, and since it's only right turn out, that means that in order to get to New Carrollton and points west, we're going to have 300 more vehicles doing U-turns at the stoplight of Fairwood and 450 during rush hours. I think that's going to pose a significant hazard to pedestrians. Aside from that, we don't have any guarantees from WMATA that there'd be increased bus service. And then lastly, with the elimination of 20 acres of trees paving over porous land, the temperature and water drainage impact is going to be immense. We're talking about raising the ambient temperature of the area during the summer months by at least 10 to 20 degrees. And it's going to be a feedback loop because people are going to use more air conditioning for those homes in order to be able to survive there. So for all these reasons, we're opposed in the Holmhurst community. Not everybody has gotten a chance to speak. Some of them are working. I took the day off to really be here. But this really has to be rethought, both in the aesthetic of the Fairwood community, of the Holmhurst community, and what we're trying to build here in Prince George's County. I moved here from Rockville, and this wouldn't really fly in the Potomac area or in places like McLean. So I just wanted to register that. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Al-Salam. I appreciate you taking the time. Next, we have, and I believe this is our final speaker, we have Dari Pugh. Is it a Mr. or Mrs. Pugh? No Dari Pugh?
They're my neighbors. They probably couldn't make it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Al-Salam. Okay, so we have no one else to speak before us. I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Tedesco for any rebuttal on this and then summation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be quick, but there's a lot.
Yeah. Before you do that, Mr. Then before you do that, and then commissioners, we'll have a chance to deliberate and decide how we want to proceed. So take it away, Mr. Tedesco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've got a lot to kind of go through there. So again, your indulgence, I appreciate it. And again, although I disagree respectfully with many, if not a lot of, or all of the comments that were made, and despite our best efforts to be transparent and informative, you unfortunately heard a lot of misinformation. Nevertheless, I respect and appreciate the passion by the citizens that are participating in this hearing, and continue and willing to continue to work with them if this project, hopefully this project continues to move forward, the detailed site plan process. First and foremost, with respect to the variation, I think Mr. Warner did an excellent job of kind of getting to some of the points that I was chopping at the bit to make, but let me reiterate. This is not a setback. I think it's a misconception and a misnomer that the lot depth requirement in the subdivision regulations is a setback, that homes have to be beyond 150 feet from an arterial road. That's not the regulation. The regulation is that the lot depth, meaning the size of the lot, the length of the lot, has to be 150 feet when the lot is adjacent to an arterial roadway. Now, as I said in my answer, we have HOA parcels that separate the lots from the right-of-way. There's also property in between the travel lanes and the property line. I guesstimated at those estimations, but I think it's reasonable to say that what we've provided in our exhibit in justification of the lot depth variation, we have 84-foot length lots. The HOA parcels range from 54 to 56 feet. You'll have sidewalk and then the travel lanes. The homes themselves will vary as far as the sticks with articulation, but the reason for the lot depth requirement is for noise attenuation. No real other reason, it's just the impacts associated with the roads. Those impacts have no bearing whatsoever, with all due respect to Mr. Suhar's clients or any of the other residents that are objecting to the variation to the lot depth. It's not whether it affects them or how it affects them. That's not the analysis. The analysis is the reason for the lot depth being 150 feet is to attenuate those negative impacts associated with being next to an arterial. We did not use that as justification. I think Mr. Suhar said a number of times that I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too, or using the justification of the requirements of CB50 to then support the variation. That's not true. I implore you all, and I know the board has, but please read pages 1 through 10 of your backup of 58, which is our justification statement, which Mr. Suhar only cited to my response that I had 3 hours to do on Tuesday before the noon deadline. We submitted an 8-page, strike that, a 10-page justification statement along with an exhibit supporting the variation. In addition, we submitted the noise study that was done. Staff has reviewed that. That noise study is 100% consistent with environmental planning's own analysis of determining where the 65 unmitigated decibel line is for projects. That's provided in the study. I don't want to read it because I don't want to belabor it, but Ms. Connor adequately summarized it, and I would rely on her summary of that. Nevertheless, in further abundance of caution, staff has recommended a condition 5B, which Mr. Heath artfully and adequately outlined for you all, that at the time of detailed site plan, staff and the planning board, if the condition is imposed, which we accept, the applicant is required to do a subsequent noise study that not only does the modeling that's accepted under the guidelines to determine the 65 dBA, but also to actually do a study based upon the collective impact of these arterial roads at the intersection in particular, where these roads meet, to establish the contours. And if any of the units, regardless of lot depth, are within those contours, then the applicant's going to have to mitigate that. So once again, the reason for the lot depth is to ensure there's no negative impacts associated with being proximate to an arterial roadway. That's being satisfied by regardless of the fact that the lot depth is not specifically being met, because the modeling shows that the 65 dBA and mitigate is not even touching these lots. And even when we do the supplemental study, if it does, we're required to mitigate. That could be in the form of berms, and that could be in the form of other mitigation. And that's precisely why the HOA parcels are there, to provide not only landscaping and other treatments that you heard one of the citizens talk about, but it provides the opportunity at the time of a detailed site plan to provide some of the things that you heard the citizens want. Landscaping, berming, softening of the development on the intersection. It also provides the opportunity potentially for the applicant to provide noise mitigation if so required. We heard a lot about practical difficulties and hardship. I would refer you to the actual, I think Mr. Warner corrected himself and correctly provided this, but practical difficulty is not the standard for the variation. 24, your indulgence, sorry. 24113A provides the required standards. And what it says regarding hardship is that because of the particular physical surroundings, shape, or topographical conditions of the specific property involved, a particular hardship to the owner would result as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of these regulations are carried out. Now, the strict letter of these regulations does not need to be carried out for all the reasons I just stated. One, the lots aren't impacted. Two, even if they are, there's a condition recommended by your staff for another noise study at the time of VSP to provide mitigation, so they won't be impacted. So the strict letter of the law, just by its mere being applied in this case, it creates a hardship, because we've already demonstrated and your staff agrees that carrying such a regulation out is not even necessary. Secondarily, my client, the property owner, me, my engineers, none of us created the shape of this property. Look at your screen. It's oddly shaped. One of the requirements, because of particular physical surroundings or shape, the mere inconvenience and hardship is created. My justification statement goes into great detail from pages 4 through pages 10. And I just want to read them real quickly for the record. The majority of these lots provide a practical lot depth of 140 feet from the rights of ways of the arterial roadways, and none of them actually front on the arterial roads. All of the lots adjoin HOA parcels to provide added separation from the arterial roads. Further, the requirement to provide a lot depth of 150 feet from an arterial road is to mitigate any presumed noise impacts associated with the lots fronting on an arterial. Consequently, in further support of the requested variation, the applicant had a noise analysis done to determine the unmitigated 65 dBA. This analysis has been submitted, preliminary plan, and was reviewed by your staff. The results indicated that separately, the 65 dBA exposures extended approximately to the site boundary and do not include any of the dwelling units. Although a variation is required for the 44 lots near the arterial, the basis for requiring the 150-foot lot depth is still accommodated since none of the lots are impacted by the 65 dBA. The subject property is uniquely and oddly shaped. It's developed on all four sides and includes environmental features challenging the goal of providing the mixed-use infill development that is context sensitive to the existing commercial and mixed-use residential developments in the area. Holding the applicant to the strict application of the 150-foot lot depth requirement is neither necessary nor appropriate given the circumstances articulated within this application. Given the lack of need or purpose of the requirement for this property, requiring the removal of 22% of the proposed 200 lots would result in undue and unnecessary hardship to the applicant. You heard a lot about maximum density and 200 units, sandwiching as many units in here as you can. That's simply not true. I provided in my opening, and we had our engineers do the analysis regarding the open space. As the project is proposed currently, we are providing 12.37 of the 22 acres as open space. That's 56%. As I mentioned in my opening, although not applicable, under the new zoning ordinance, there's open space set-aside requirements. If we were to apply those open space set-asides and we elected to use the most conservative required percentage, which would be 20%, under those standards, we're at almost 35% open space set-aside. So the notion of cramming as many units in here is simply not correct. Schools, traffic, and all those items, I think we've articulated those with respect to the ADQ that's been approved. However, I just would note for the record, although not necessarily part of this hearing, given the approval of the ADQ for this matter, in your backup and as part of the ADQ, your transportation planning staff reviewed the traffic impact analysis under existing background and proposed conditions. All of the intersections that you heard about today as being woefully inadequate all operate at levels of service A or B under all circumstances, including the site access points. They meet all the adequacy requirements. There was a comment about buffers along the right-of-way. We agree with that comment from one of the Wingate residents. That's precisely why we have HOA properties adjacent to the right-of-ways before the lots even start. There was comments about lack of aesthetics. Please don't penalize the applicant for not having aesthetics and site and architectural elevations at the time of a preliminary plan. I think that goes without saying, but with all due respect, aesthetics of the homes, the landscaping, the amenity features, all those things will come at the time of detailed site plan, which we have been very forthcoming and consistent with saying we intend to work with the community to ensure that these products are high-end homes. With respect to the text amendment, there was conversations about that. I would just turn your attention to page 5 of your staff report, which talks about the master plan conformance. In March of this year, the 2022 Bowie Vicinity Master Plan was adopted. The land use strategy for this property recommends the development to be, and it's page 76, map 16, commercial future land use category. Commercial future land use category, and the comprehensive zoning strategy in the master plan requires the property to be rezoned to the CGO zone. The CGO zone allows 20 units to the acre for townhomes. This project proposes 10 units to the acre, significantly less than what the master plan envisions for a mixed use on this property, notwithstanding the text amendment. There was a comment about fast food use as part of the commercial. We don't have any tenants for the commercial space. We have not indicated that any one particular use has been earmarked or identified, with the exception of it cannot be a gas station pursuant to the footnote 144. We have asked, and the community has been very responsive in providing suggestive ideas for potential commercial uses for the property, which we will endeavor to continue to have those conversations with the community. Unfortunately, what you're hearing today is a lot of we don't want any townhouses, respectfully. However, if you look at the character of the area, there are townhouses and a significant number of attached and or multifamily units in the area to and including Fairwood. We have every belief that these townhouses are going to be as better, if not more so, than the townhouses that exist at Fairwood. And we look forward to the opportunity to work with Fairwood to make sure of that. There is also townhouses to the west of this property that access from 450. I'm reminded by the fact that when even Fairwood was going through its entitlement process many, many, many years ago, and its zoning process, nobody wanted Fairwood. That was wrought with opposition, and it's one of the nicest mixed-use planned communities in the county. And we see no reason why this project won't facilitate and complement and build off of what's been established in the community and in the area. I think, Mr. Chairman, just your indulgence to make sure I got everything. Oh, and let me address the name and the branding. During our meetings with the Fairwood Homeowners Association, we've been asked whether there would be any consideration of joining the Fairwood HOA. We have not really gotten to a conclusion on that. We welcome those conversations. I don't know all the moving parts of what's required to do that, but we're willing to work with Fairwood if there's such a desire. But by asking the question, I didn't want to presume there was, but hearing the objections to the use of the name Fairwood for the branding, that's easily resolvable, not subject to whether this preliminary plan should be approved or not. But publicly, let me just reiterate the applicant's position on that. We will and want to be respectful. If it makes sense for both my client and the Fairwood HOA to join each other, and that's legally and available, we're happy to explore it. If not, we're happy to continue to explore and continue to have the conversations that we've had with respect to the naming and the branding to be respectful to the existing community. I think, Mr. Chairman, that sums up the rebuttal points, at least the ones I was able to jot down. I had 12 of them. And I think with that, I would submit on what's been provided to the board. Respectfully request that you support staff's recommendations that have thoroughly reviewed this application. All the legal requirements for this application should be approved. And I'll just end on this. If I didn't meet any of the legal requirements and I came in here with 100 people, I would suspect that this board would deny my application. Similarly, if I come in here meeting all the legal requirements and there's 100 people opposing me, I suspect that the board should legally approve the application, because we don't make decisions based upon plebiscite. And so regardless of the facts that there's some opposition in this case, we're going to continue to work with them. We want to be good neighbors. We've endeavored to be good neighbors. I understand the feelings and the passion related to Frank's being redeveloped, given the fact that it's been there for more than 4 decades. But this site has been, I think, purposefully overlooked because of who the owners were and have been there for as long as they've been. The new master plan seeks to advance this property to the 21st century pursuant to the new zoning ordinance. And I would submit to you that this application is far less dense than even what the master plan would contemplate. So again, for all those reasons, we would respectfully request that you approve this application to include the variance to remove the specimen trees, as well as the variation, and further support our justification statement for both, which is in your backup. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. Commissioners, you have heard the summation from the applicant, Mr. Tedesco representing the applicant. If there's no other questions for anyone else who has testified or the applicant, then I will close the hearing. But before I do that, Mr. Warner, you have something to add?
I do, and it's fine that this is that I say this while the hearing's still open. David Warner, Principal Counsel, for the record. I want to clear up one thing for the record. Mr. Tedesco said that practical difficulty was not one of the standards for granting a variation. Let's clarify that. So yes, well, first of all, the planning board does need to find that there was extraordinary hardship or practical difficulty, either one of those, that may result if this applicant has to strictly comply with the subdivision regulations, or the planning board needs to find that the purposes of the subdivision regulations will be served to a greater extent by the applicant's proposed variation. So while practical difficulties is not required, it is one of the requirements that you could use to find that this variation is applicable. So it's a little bit of a distinction. I wanted to just make sure that was on the record so the law was correctly stated.
Thank you for that, Mr. Warner. I appreciate the clarification. So commissioners, the hearing is closed. We'll proceed to any discussion or what's your pleasure?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman, but I would like to thank the impassioned members of the community for coming out and certainly testifying. I think I've heard enough, just given the back and forth and some of the questions that have been addressed. And I especially appreciate Mr. Tedesco's commitment to continue working with the community. A lot of the issues that were raised, I would say the vast majority of the items that were raised by those testifying are actually items that will be addressed at DSP. And granted, the citizens don't understand the process, that they're not involved with it like we are on a day-to-day basis. So I would just ask them to remain involved, stay engaged, especially things like aesthetics and design. All of that will be dealt with at the next phase, if in fact it gets to that stage.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me wait. I agree with that. And I think that we have, the record is complete. We've heard lots of information on both sides. We've heard a lot of passion from folks in the community and some very thoughtful comments from folks in the community as well about this. From my perspective, I think that the applicant has made a good case. I hear the staff's recommendation. As I'm looking at this, and to your point, Commissioner Washington, there's a number of items that are going to come before us again at detailed site plan if we take action. But I'm more than satisfied that they've met the requirements, and I concur with staff's recommendation. And I would encourage us to support this preliminary plan of subdivision as it's presented to us. So I just wanted to weigh in with that. Any other thoughts from commissioners, questions, anything else for discussion? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff in addition to the modified findings in staff exhibit number 1 and finding number 11 as modified by applicant exhibit number 1, and approve preliminary plan 4-21058 TCP 1-014-2022, variation from section 24-121A4 and variance to section 25-122B1G, along with the associated conditions as outlined in staff's report, and is further modified by staff exhibit number 1 and is further modified by applicant exhibit number 1.
Second, and I would like to associate myself with Ms. Washington's original comments.
I agree. So we have a discussion, we have a motion by Commissioner Washington and a second by Vice Chair Bailey. I just want to make sure that with the motion again, because there was some additional clarification that was made. Mr. Tedesco had an additional change, that a revision that staff concurred with. Is that included in this as well?
That was the finding number 11.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for catching that. So any further discussion on the motion before I call the roll?
I would just like to thank the commissioner for always being very detailed.
Say again, Commissioner Dorner.
I just want to thank the motion maker. As you will learn, nothing slips by her. So she's on top of these things and keeps us straight.
Yes, indeed. She is indeed. Nothing else, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, everybody, for your participation on this matter. That concludes all the items that we have for today's agenda. Mr. Hunt, any further business before us?
Mr. Chairman, there are no additional business items before the board today.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. So then, unless there is an objection, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Bye-bye.